The Shadow Home Secretary, Diane Abbott, joins us in the studio. Good morning, thanks for coming in. Do you believe that dictators should pay a price for dropping chemical gas on children?
Of course, the use of chemical weapons is horrific, whether it's in the killing fields of Syria or even if it's in English county towns. But first of all, we need to get the evidence. It's the US Defense Secretary, Mattis, who says we don't have all the evidence. That's why we're calling for an independent UN-led investigation of the horrific chemical weapons attacks. But the other issue is this. We've heard from the gentleman that you just had on air, but there are many elements in opposition to Assad. And I think it was Julian Lewis, chair of the Defence Select Committee, who said recently, the real danger is that what starts out as a justified punishment for the use of chemical weapons ends up with the Royal Air Force serving as the air arm of the jihadi extremist rebels in Syria.
Okay.
So first of all, we have to get the evidence.
Well, let's deal with that then, the evidence. Clarify what it is that Labour needs. President Macron of France says that he has the evidence. Inspectors are going in this weekend from the official chemical weapons inspectors called the OPCW. If they confirm that chemical weapons were used, would that be enough for the Labour Party?
Let's see what the inspectors come up with. But as I'm saying to you, it's not just the Labour Party. The US Defence Secretary is saying we don't have all the evidence.
Party rather than him, so I want to know what is enough for the Labour Party.
Let's see what the inspectors come up with. But at the moment, as I say, even in the US, there's an understanding that we don't have all the evidence.
Well, you say let's see, but you see the Labour leader, Jeremy Corbyn, has issued a statement this morning in which he doesn't refer to the weapons inspectors. He calls for an independent UN-led investigation. How likely do you think it is that there will be an independent UN-led investigation?
The Labour Party believes in the rule of law, and we hope that there will be an independent UN-led investigation.
Why wasn't there one after the last chemical attack? Why hasn't there been a single UN-led investigation since the Syrian war began 8 years ago?
We have to go forward, and we have to go forward on the basis of the facts and the basis of the evidence.
No, sure, but why
and
hasn't there been... No, it's a reasonable question. You're calling for something that hasn't happened for 8 years, so why hasn't it happened?
We think it should happen. That's our position. You'd have to ask the UN, but we think it should happen.
Well, shall I tell you why it hasn't happened? Because Russia have vetoed such a call 6 times.
The Labour Party believes that there is no military solution to the situation in Syria.
That's clear, but
there's a political...
Imagine you're in office now, Diane Abbott. Jeremy Corbyn, we know, thinks there could be an election by the end of the year. He would be Prime Minister in number 10. You would be sitting around a war cabinet table. You recommend that the UN should investigate. And officials say to you, it's a very interesting idea, Minister, but Russia has vetoed such an investigation 6 times and they will do it again. So what now?
There has to be a political negotiation, because you're never going to solve the situation in Syria whilst Assad has the tacit support of Russia and Tehran.
So I'm asking you a specific question. If Russia vetoes what you are calling for in the Labour Party, which they have done 6 times already, what would be the reaction of a Labour government in that circumstance?
We would press on, trying to bring people to the table. We believe that more bombing is not the answer to the crisis in Syria.
But at the beginning, you see, you answered the question, should dictators pay a price for dropping chemical gas on children? Yes, you said. But you would call for something that's never happened and you've just admitted probably won't happen now.
No, I'm not.
So what price would Assad pay for dropping gas on children?
There is a response which falls short of more bombing. We believe there needs to be a coordinated international drive to achieve a ceasefire and a negotiated political settlement. That's what has to happen.
You've just heard from the leader of the Syrian opposition parties. These are the leaders recognised by the United Nations. They had talks this week at the UN. Leaders recognised in all Western capitals. He says that doesn't work. Assad has ignored all calls for talks. The Russians have ignored calls for those formal talks.
There are many elements on the ground in Syria. If we believe that there's no possibility of a political resolution, that is to give up all hope. And we can't afford to give up on the people of Syria. I have visited refugee camps across Europe, Calais, Lebanon, Lesbos, and I've seen the tragedy, the personal tragedies caused by this war in Syria, and we cannot afford to give up hope in what will be the only resolution, a political negotiation.
What would happen if Jeremy Corbyn were Prime Minister and you were Home Secretary? You would call for something that hasn't happened up till now, and you would say, if President Macron picked up the phone and said to Jeremy Corbyn, there is evidence, there should be military action, there is a red line to stop chemical weapons use, you'd say to Monsieur Macron, sorry, we disagree, we're not in favour.
We cannot give up hope on a political situation. And the British public knows this. The British public, the majority of the British public, are against a military intervention in Syria because they know that these military interventions can become open-ended. I remind you of Afghanistan. We were in Afghanistan for 13 years. It cost us £40 billion, 456 soldiers died. These interventions can become an open-ended. That's why the British public says sceptical.
But in a sense there, aren't you hinting at what is your real position and Jeremy Corbyn's position, which is it's appalling what's happening in Syria. You're morally repulsed, but you don't believe in military action in any circumstances at all. You believe it's wrong.
No,
why don't you say so?
No, of course. What
are the circumstances? What are the circumstances, if you say no, in which you would back military action?
There was a Second World War.
I didn't mean in any. I meant in this scenario in Syria. Are there any circumstances in which you would ever back the use of military force?
There is no evidence to show.
Forgive me, that's not my question. Are there any circumstances?
Let me answer it in my own way. There's no evidence to show that further bombing in Syria will make the region more stable. And what we're interested in the end is making
circumstances in which you would ever.
What the Labour Party is interested in is making the region more stable and enabling some of those Syrian refugees I've seen across Europe, enabling them to go back.
Are there any circumstances in which Labour would back military action?
What we're interested in is an end to the violence.
So the answer is no, isn't it?
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying what we're interested in is an end to the violence, and we don't believe that further bombing in this situation will bring an end to the violence.
Do you believe that Russia or the United States are a greater threat to world peace?
I think that the current situation in Syria actually is a threat to world peace. And we know that one of the issues with bringing Assad to the negotiation table is the support he has, the current support he has from Russia.
Is that a question you don't feel you can answer, whether Russia is a bigger threat to the world than the United States?
Well, at this point, after Salisbury, and with the unremitting support of Russia for Assad, you have to say Russia isn't bringing forward the cause of world peace.
Sure, but you can't say it's a bigger threat than the United States, just so we're clear.
It's clear that at this point, Russia, its role in Syria, it's what we believe, beyond reasonable doubt, is its role in the poison gas attack in Salisbury, is a greater threat to world peace than the United States.